I'd like to go around and have you introduce yourselves and share just a little bit about the mission and the work that you're doing in your community. So let's start with Diva.
Hello, hi, everybody. Hi, Natalie. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Deva-Dee Siliee. You can just call me Deva,
Yeah.
and I am one of the founders, together with Lisa Edewins, here in Curaçao of Curaçao Cares. This year is our fifth anniversary. We started with this idea to come back to our island. Curaçao is a small island of about 160,000 people, so mostly like a small town in one of your countries. And we both lived in New York, and I used to volunteer a lot in New York. I was a member of New York Cares, and there was always this. We walked around with this idea: what if we do so much for other communities? Why not for our own communities? And in 2012, we took that leap. I took a sabbatical and I came to Curacao thinking that I would be here for a few months. And 5 years later, we are still here. We have over the years grown our presence on the island. This past weekend, we had a national volunteer weekend with over 300 projects and 5,000 volunteers, um, which was really great. And it's been a joy seeing the initiative grow into, you know, from a thought into something that is making impact.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Deva. Catalina, you're joining us from Panama.
Hi, thank you very much for the opportunity. Congratulations, Deva, on your enterprise. Very much like Deva here in Panama. Well, I'm the founder of Voluntarios de Panamá, or Panama Volunteers. We are affiliated with the Points of Light Foundation and also with the International Association of Volunteer Effort. And basically, it's very similar to Deva. We started 5 years ago with the idea of establishing in Panama a national volunteer center that could mobilize citizens, mobilize their time and their talent towards making an impact in our local nonprofit organizations. We started 5 years ago with 50 nonprofits. Now we're a network of over 200 nonprofits working with thousands of volunteers nationwide, mobilizing in skills-based volunteering, in pro bono, in virtual, in episodic and events, in volunteering all over the country. So we're very happy that our alliance with Points of Light has allowed us to mature, to improve our services, and also to have the opportunity to share with others like us in the region. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Catalina. Vanessa, it's so great to see you again. And I think you are our lone leader in cold weather. So,
yeah, I'm moving on the floor with a little bit of snow here in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm in Richmond, Virginia. We are a mid-sized city in the United States, and I'm also one of the co-founders of our affiliate here. We're about 10 years old. And kind of a similar story where we founded our affiliate based on wanting to volunteer and get involved. And we had been in other regions where there were similar models. And I worked with two other women to start HandsOn Greater Richmond. And we've been working to kind of build a civic infrastructure here and volunteer infrastructure. And then recently, our organization just merged into our local community foundation. So we're expanding our work to really think both about volunteer action, but also what does civic leadership look like? How does civic leadership kind of connect to philanthropy? So that's a little bit of the gist of what we're up to here in Richmond.
Well, it's so nice to have all of you together, and it's great that we are not only united in our work of service, but we're also united through this technology, and we're connected through technology. So why don't we get started? And I'll ask a couple of questions, and it'll just be a round robin. So Catalina and Deva, Deva, we'll start with you again. What women leaders, either current or historic, inspire you to be civically engaged?
Well, I think there are various women. As you know, often when you have a tribe of women, you're not just by yourself. If I look at my own home country, Curacao has had multiple female prime ministers who have led the country. And I think that really makes an impact on you to see women in leadership positions. But also my own mother, who has always been an active volunteer and has multiple projects for youth. And as a tiny kid, I always got to come along. So people close to me here on the island have had a tremendous influence on being exposed to volunteer work since being a small child, and always thinking about what do you mean for other in your community. But if I look around, I think every time I'm at the conference of Points of Light, I meet more women leaders. Carolina, I haven't met you personally yet, but I've met a few women leaders, simply engaged in the Points of Light network, which we follow your work constantly. And that inspired us as well to get started back in 2012 to see that it's possible. So I think there have been various people throughout the years that have inspired me.
Great. Thank you, Deva. Catalina, the work is so hard. What women leaders have inspired you?
Thank you, Natalye. Well, just like Deva, I think there's people that are closest to you in your life that have inspired you and been role models for you to pave that path for us to become involved. I think definitely, like Deva, within my own family, my mom was a big inspiration. She always supported local nonprofits. She always also motivated me when I had the idea of, I want to go to a homeless shelter, or I want to go to a hospital for burn children. She would never say, no, you can't do it, or be careful. She would take me, and then she would become a donor, and then she would provide me with resources to continue doing my work. So that was a big inspiration. I think also in my country, a big inspiration for us is to see historically women who have been leaders even before the time that women were allowed to vote. One such example that I refer to is Matilde Obarrio. She was the founder of the Red Cross here in Panama in 1917. And even though she was a woman with economic resources, she was she promoted public policy, and she promoted the creation of the Red Cross here in Panama, and her legacy lives on today. And then more specifically in the field of volunteer management, for me, a huge influence and inspiration was Sarah Jane Remborg. She was my professor at the University of Texas, and she gave the class on volunteer management. And I had no idea that this discipline existed. I knew there was nonprofit management, but I didn't know there existed this discipline. And she opened my eyes to this whole field of what I had been doing empirically and with a lot of good intentions could be professionalized. And so that really was a great also inspiration for me, specifically in this field.
Wow, thank you. And Vanessa, you have been at this for 10 years, really a leader and an entrepreneur in your community. What are some of the challenges you think we face and women face in this sector today?
I think the challenges kind of come from two places. I think there's like this external challenge of political or cultural norms of what people expect. No matter how modernized or liberated we think women may be in the United States or in other countries, there's still varying levels of discrimination and barriers put around our education or the expectations of what kinds of jobs we have. So I think we have to look through and look past, I think, the cultural norms. I am also a mother of 2 daughters, so I see it not only in my work, but I see it in parenting all the time, where I have to explain when they see something on the news about the Me Too movement, because they may be 8 and 10, but they're seeing things. They see things that happen in media, and they ask questions. Well, why can't that woman do that? Why is she not raising her hand in the class? Or they can pick up on those norms. And when I see it through my children's eyes, I realize that was also what I saw. Right. So there's these external people or media or culture that tells us that we have limitations. So I think we have to really carve through those and determine our own path and build the right friendships and alliances and partnerships that help us kind of excel in our work. But that really flips back, I think, to the other side is what are our expectations of ourselves, and where do we limit ourselves? And I know for me, thinking about kind of my education growing up, it was very liberal arts oriented. So I work really hard to make sure that like I am top notch on my budget, in my Excel spreadsheets, in my finances, to really make sure that I'm counterbalancing both any limitations I may have had in my education, but also any expectations that someone might have of me as a woman leader. And I really want to make sure that I'm kind of putting all of me and my potential forward, and not limiting it either by my own internal, guardrails. And I definitely don't like other people putting guardrails on me. So I'm definitely going to break through those as much as I can too. So hopefully we can kind of find a way to balance the internal and external expectations that we have of ourselves.
Thank you. I think that's really good advice for everyone who's watching this video and listening to this conversation. Deva, back to you. We'll ask you, why do you think it's important for women to be civically engaged?
Well, I think there's a saying, and I think it applies to various things. The saying that when you educate a woman, you educate a family, and you educate a whole nation. I think that's also the case with volunteer work and civic engagement. When a woman is involved, often she takes other women along, she takes her family along, she takes her neighborhood along. And I don't want to say it's natural, but oftentimes that feeling of empathy, being able to take action based on empathy. I saw it in action this week with our volunteer weekend. This woman who decided to go to every single house in the neighborhood to invite them to volunteer. She is not fearful of maybe getting a rejection. She just knocks on the door and goes in and invites everybody. So that building a community, I think taking others along, I think it's important for women to take that leadership role and speak about the impact to other people, to inspire them. So it's important to hear different voices, as well, of course, voices of men and youth, but women essentially are able to take on a leadership role in this. So it's important that we make sure that we create a pathway for women of all ages to take along their tribe.
Thank you. Very, very important words. Catalina, women have always played a critical role in nonprofit and the charity space. How do you think the role has shifted in the social sector over the last decade?
Thank you. Yeah, I think definitely in the US and in Latin America as well, women have been trailblazers. They've been pioneers in the nonprofit and the charity sector, founding many of the greater nonprofit organizations, and have been great social activists. And at least in Latin America, we owe a lot of our social institutions to the role of women. I think one change is that women leaders, at least in the social sector, have become more visible and more vocal. I think in the past, it was more of something that was encased in a more traditional role, like Deva said, maybe, women are more empathetic, or women are more involved in child rearing, and it was kind of like perceived as kind of like a natural extension of their role, of their maternal role. And I think that that's definitely not the case anymore. I think they're recognized as leaders on their own, as people who work on this for a cause and in a professional way. So I think that that's something that has shifted. And we have seen, at least here in Latin America, a lot more women coming into the social sector, women leaders, much more prepared, having studied, having prepared themselves professionally and with international experiences to bring more innovation into the social sector. So I think that's a role that has shifted. And I think technology has played a really big role in that. I think women also are leading the way in promoting promoting more alliance building, in the understanding that we can't achieve our social objectives individually, but more towards a framework of collective impact. And I'm seeing that more and more women are the ones who are pioneering in the collective impact space here, at least in my country, and also in the working across sectors, with government, with nonprofits, with individuals, with universities. We have a lot of women leaders in all these different spaces, and we find ourselves contributing a lot. So many of our meetings are all women in the room across a multitude of sectors working towards a common goal. So I see that they're assuming that role of leadership. And that they're promoting greater also efficiency and greater impact in the sector.
Great, thank you. Vanessa, what are your thoughts about that? I think Catalina makes some really good points about women taking up the space to do more and work together. What are some of the leadership trends you're seeing on the horizon?
I think she's just right on point.
Yeah.
When I think about changing in leadership, it's really about a nimbleness. I feel like if you look out on the horizon, you see that leadership it's a nimble field now, and that previously, you can think of everything on this continuum. There's an individual leader, we have representative kind of models of leadership, and then we have this more collective voice. And I see that both in every level of our organization, and more so in the expectation of how do we work within, in partnership, in alliance, collaboratively, with residents, business sector, the philanthropy sector. And it doesn't really matter where we're coming from. If we're trying to do good, we're trying to find this kind of collective voice. And I feel like leadership isn't as much about, this is our direction and this is what we're going to do, as really picking the brains and the minds and the hearts and the vision of our entire community to try to bring everybody into that process. And it's hard, and I don't think we understand it. I don't understand it fully yet. I'm curious. I know that there's a different way for us to be doing our work, and it is much more of a collective voice, and it's much more based in equity and in conversation. And I think it's a new way for us to learn how to be leaders and to step back a little bit in our leadership styles and realize that leadership isn't just, kind of driving forward. It's really taking the time to making sure that everyone is kind of heading in the same direction. And I think it's exciting because it feels more authentic, and it feels like it's about everyone getting somewhere, not just kind of, driving down the road. I used to always say, for my leadership style, I used to be really good at like knocking a hole through the mountain. But if you can't lay tracks and bring your team or your organization or your community with you, it doesn't matter. So how do you do that in a collective voice is, I think, what's next on the horizon for all of us.
Yeah. And what excites you the most about that, Vanessa?
There's so much more beauty in the diversity of voice. And I feel like if we can change the way we lead, if we can change this inclusive, our organizations to be inclusive and listening, I feel like the solutions are really there for, I've been in the nonprofit sector for 20 years now, and we do good work, but are we changing things? Are we getting to the symptoms? No, we're not. And because we don't know how to yet. If we knew how to, we would have solved all of these problems. Like, they're really complex issues. And I think this change of kind of self-activation and technology and the millennial generation kind of banging on the door and being like, no, we got to do something different. I think it's exciting. I mean, it could definitely take a leader and put them in a fearful place, right? They're going to go in their office and they're going to close their door and keep driving. But I think the answer is the other way around. It's like, crack it open and find a collective solution, and you're probably going to get to a much better, wholesome, authentic path. And it's hard, and I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm learning, and I think we all are. So I don't know. I just find that more exciting and more authentic, and hopefully a better way to get to where I think we're all trying to head to.
Well, I think that's something that you and I share in common, which is enlist a large crew so that you get the best voices around the table to help really a pleasure. We have two more questions, and these two questions we would love to hear from each of you. The first one is, Deva, we'll begin with you. We'll continue going around. What's the best advice you received from another female leader?
Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't question your brilliance. You are capable of doing anything that you think. You're capable of making the same impact as any other person in your community. And especially since I'm a young woman, oftentimes you're afraid that your age can be a factor in how people take you seriously or not. Remember when we got started, we had to pitch to companies to get seed funding to get started. And you sitting, I was in my 20s, I'm sitting across from male CEOs of big companies. So really believing in yourself and what you bring to the table and in your ability to make a change and set up something that is going to be impactful. I think that's the best advice, but also take somebody along with you. Always make sure that you pay it forward. Take somebody along, everything you learn. Don't keep it to yourself, but share it so that others can also use that knowledge in whatever their endeavors are.
That's excellent. Thank you. Catalina, the best advice you've received from a woman leader?
I think just the same as Deva, and I was smiling because it's the same thing that I think in the case of female advice, it was my mom who was always motivating me to not stop and keep doing the work that I thought was important. But then in the spirit of inclusion as well, the best advice I got from a male is really from my husband, because when I was starting with this project, I was so overwhelmed and I didn't know it was going to work or not. I was going to fail, and I was also seeing it as like a measure of my own ability, right, of my own capacity to make a change. And also I had waited a long time to start the project because of my because I became a mom and I had to work, and so I delayed my project for a pretty long time until I felt I could do it. And he gave me two advice that I remember to this day. He told me that dreams never expire, so I should keep trying. Even if it took you 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, a day, the dream is still valid, so you should still do it. And the other one was that to focus more on the idea or the achievement of the goal than on yourself. Instead of measuring your social enterprise by your capability, or if you did it first or another person, take out the ego out of the equation and focus definitely on that impact that you want to achieve. And if you have that really clear in your mind, then there's nothing that can stop you. And then the alliances will come, the donors will come, the volunteers will come, because you're doing something that is appealing to everybody else that is bigger than you.
Great, thank you. Vanessa, best advice from a female leader, and in the spirit of inclusion, a male leader as well.
Yeah. I don't know if there's like a distinctive, like, oh, it was this piece of advice. I would say the best kind of advice or like support I've gotten really is to question everything. Both question the direction you're heading, and really not in a bad way, but in a way of like, are you heading in the right direction? Is this just habit? Is this breaking form? Is there a way that you can push past beyond what we think we should be doing into really what does the community need from us? And sometimes those things are aligned and sometimes they're different. I went through a process this past year with a woman leader in our community that was helping me guide as we did some reorganization of our work. And we really went through that kind of 5 whys, everything I would say I wanted to do. She was like, why, till you really drill down on like why you want to do it. And it really helped me prove that there were some things that we were doing because they were excellent programming. It was the right strategy. It was the right time. And then there were some things that halfway through the whys, I was like, I don't know why we're doing this anymore. This maybe isn't what we should be doing in our community. It might not be what we need. And that was a really hard process personally and professionally. But on the other side of it, you feel more true and authentic to the work that the community is asking of us to deliver. And it allows us to shed ourselves from the work. And that can be really hard, I think. When we're doing community-based social work or social change work, I think our personal selves and our ideals are really integrated into this work. And there's a really beautiful thing about that. And then there are times that we need to kind of unravel that and figure out what is important for our community and not just the habit of what we have been doing. So that's been a pretty incredible process for me. And really influenced by some women leaders in the community that helped really support me through the process by just asking really hard questions and knowing that I kind of had the answers inside. And I think that was the really kind of powerful moment for me.
Great, thank you. Well, we've heard some really good advice that you've all received, to be persistent, to give back, to partner, and to persevere. I would share that some of the best advice I've received is really about explaining and complaining. Don't explain and don't complain frequently as women. And this is not in terms of sharing a conclusion, but sometimes as women, we over-explain why we are actually doing something. And so I just remember that, don't explain and don't complain, and definitely to give back. So last question, quickly, ladies, before we wrap up. What is the best advice that you have for young women and emerging leaders in our sector? Deva.
I think that is. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Just making sure. What I just mentioned as the advice that I got, I would like to pass on as well, is don't question what you have to bring to the table, and be courageous. It can be incredibly fearful to make certain decisions or steps. Also because you think you are more likely to fail because you're young. You don't have the right experience. You don't have all the knowledge yet. You might not even have the network or the alliances. Go out there and seek the connections. Go out there and read everything you can read. So be courageous, be persistent, and don't be afraid to ask questions. People are glad to share and guide you and support you if you share your passion and if you share your vision with others. That's how we've received support throughout these years, and we were able to grow as women leaders, as the founders of the organization, and also while we grow the organization. So be courageous, and just take the leap.
Thank you. Great, perfect. Catalina.
Yeah, actually, I mentor a lot of young people who are in this transition phase in their life. And I also see the difference with younger people today being more concerned, at least here in Latin America, more concerned about doing well and doing good at the same time, and exploring new avenues for their professional development in the social sector, because they understand that their actions have an impact on the environment, on their communities. So that's one thing that I think a strength that young people have today, and they're seeking actively mentorship and help and support from those who have already been there, done that before them, right? And I think, just like Deva, my advice to young people who want to be in the civic social sector is to really take time to study the problem. Like you said before, we want to do a lot of things, and I myself am involved in tons of projects, and I always say, yeah, I help everybody, I want to help her. And all of a sudden I'm in like 20 projects, and I'm not focused on the real problem that I want to solve. Or we start experimenting with things without really being knowledgeable about what it is that we want to solve. So it might take you a little more time to design your enterprise or whatever program you want to develop, or what career you want to achieve. But it's very useful to take the time to really study and have a goal, a very clear goal in your mind, because in in this sector, there's so much to do. You want to do everything. You can't do everything. And you have to focus and then be able to have your quick wins to show that your work is valuable, and then you can do more. But understanding that took me a long time. So that would be my advice for the young people.
Great. I think you got unanimous smiles when you said we want to do everything, because that's probably something that we all have in common. We want to save the world and solve every problem. Vanessa.
Like my mantra and kind of my advice is an analogy. I always say, be like water. Slip through the cracks, move, ebb, flow. Sometimes life is whitewater, and sometimes you're supposed to churn. You're supposed to sit and think. And, I think Carolina said it, like research and get to know an issue. You don't have to pummel through everything. And then there's times to pummel through and really, be crazy whitewater. And then there's times that you want to stand up and be solid like ice and frozen in your wholehearted belief in an idea or a project, and you want to put everything you have into it. But you have to be able to be malleable, because all of those things are valid and important, and they're important roles for you to play in the work we do. And it's just really recognizing that there's a time for kind of every one of those movements, probably every day, so it's like you're going through it every day. You're going through it with every project or initiative that you might work with. And you're definitely going to go through it within your career. So be like water.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. So thank you so much. We heard from Deva, Catalina, and Vanessa about confidence, courage, studying the problem, focusing, and love the metaphor being like water. One of the best advice I would give to young women today is to really just be your authentic self. And when you have the opportunity to lead, be honest and fair in your leadership. And with that, we would say thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and really enjoy working with you and being a part of a collective team where service unites, and we are out solving problems in our community through volunteerism and service. So thank you, ladies, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.